Hey everybody, welcome back to Goody and Johnny Mo at the Movies. Thank you so much again for joining us. Whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us on our podcast, thank you so much. So tonight is a special episode for Johnny Mo and I because it is our 50th episode.
Significant milestone episode.
A significant episode
Very
for us.
happy.
And,
how long in the making?
Oh God, February. This will be 3 years in February.
It'll be 3
It'll be our third year, yeah, because last year, 2020, was almost a joke. We really didn't get a lot done. But the fact that we hit this, we're very happy that we're here at this point. Our goal is to get to 100, and we'll see where we go from there.
Yes, our current goal is to get to 100, but the long-term goal is to just keep going and going and going. Sky's the limit.
So in this episode, we are going to be bringing you Ghostbusters Afterlife. Well, this is slightly delayed, but we have our reasons for that. But we are going to go through this episode because we both saw the movie, and I think we both enjoyed it.
And even though this movie came out in
late November
around Thanksgiving time, we are currently in Christmas time, if you couldn't tell by my headgear. But we are right now the day after Christmas Day.
Yeah. So we have a few movies still coming down the pipe that we're going to be getting out to you guys. Hopefully we can pump out a couple in the next couple of weeks to try to catch up since the new year's coming, and we know more movies are going to be coming along the way.
Yeah, we do have a bunch of movies there, a bunch of movies coming up that we definitely want to see. We definitely have some movies that we've seen and haven't reviewed yet. Don't know if we'll get to them at some point. They'll become passé.
We plan on doing them. They'll be, at that point in time, they'll end up being retro reviews.
Yes.
because the Blu-rays are already coming out.
yeah, they'll be retro reviews, but that's fine. Yeah, and they'll even be into the following year from when they came out. A 2022 retro review of movies we saw in 2021 that we really wanted to talk about and just didn't get a chance to.
So we will get to it. But with that, we are going to do our traditional drink of the night. And because tonight is episode 50 and it's a special occasion.
We have some very special stuff going on.
Yes, we do.
So first we're going to talk about, we're going to do this in chronological order. First we're going to talk about the shots. So the shots are coming from my annual bottle of Johnny Walker Blue Label. Comes in this nice thing, nice case. Basically, the history with me and Johnny Walker Blue Label is when I turned 50, I had gotten a bottle just like this for my birthday. And I'm like, wow, this is expensive stuff. And I knew about it, but I never bought a bottle myself. And I don't even know if I had ever had it before that, maybe once. And someone got me a bottle, and it was like, wow, this is really good. And I'm like, you know what? This sounds like the beginning of a good tradition. I think I need to buy myself a bottle of Blue Label Johnny Walker every year for my birthday. And then it lasts as long as it lasts, and I don't get another bottle till the following year. So this bottle was purchased in August and somehow has made it all the way to December. It usually doesn't last this long.
Usually doesn't.
And I still got a good amount left for a couple of shots.
Yeah.
But I definitely wanted to use...
yes, he doesn't drink this on the rocks or in a Scotch glass, which is traditionally how you would drink Johnny Walker Blue.
No, I do. I like to shoot it, and it's so smooth. But I definitely wanted to do... donate 2 shots out of my bottle to us this special 50th episode.
And then we're gonna do friends and family shout out.
Yeah, I think we do everything at once.
Yeah,
we get and now the friends and family of Goody and Johnny Mo special shout out goes to good friends Dave Perry and his sons Michael and Matthew from Maryland.
Maryland, yep.
We were down there earlier this year for a family function. And what was provided to us is, well, we actually had these there. We had
an extra.
Dave's son, Michael, bought me and Chris each a Paulaner Oktoberfest beer. This huge can is 1 quart, and it comes with a really big German Paulaner München beer mug. So we actually, what we did is we each got a mug and a beer. We drank one down in Maryland, and we saved the other one, and we knew we were going to save it for the 50th episode. And we finally got around to it.
So thank you, Michael, very much. This is dedicated to you.
And this is really good stuff because we had this already, and it's actually really good. But like drinking a whole one of these yourself is very arduous.
Oh yeah, I mean this is split.
Yeah,
So like
this is
this is split of one can. I mean, what's 1 quart of beer, which is that's quite a lot.
it's really good stuff. So we are going to say cheers to the 50th episode.
Cheers to all of our listeners, followers. Thank you guys so much.
And that is really smooth.
Oh, it's still so good.
And this is a cheers to the Perry family for being big fans.
Cheers, guys. Thank you so much.
Oh, man, and that is a good chaser.
Oh, excellent. Good start to the show. All right, so.
Okay, let me clear up some of this stuff.
So we are going to be. So for those of you that have been following us for a while, and especially have gone back and have seen when we did our top 10 list of all time of our favorite films, you guys know that Ghostbusters is in my top 10. Believe it or not, it's in my top 5.
All time.
All time.
Yeah.
And it was one of the first films I believe I saw as a kid in the theater. I think I was 3 years old when it came out.
Because the movie came out in 84, no?
Right. And ever since then, I've just really been infatuated with that film. Love the first one to death.
Do you remember seeing it?
I don't remember seeing that movie.
But yeah. Still,
I was really young.
I'll be honest with you, it's really hard to remember films from that long ago.
Oh, yeah. No, I definitely don't remember that.
I know that the earliest movie I remember seeing, I think I was 5 years old. Saw the original Disney Robin Hood when it opened at Radio City Music Hall. And I remember going, I remember sitting there, I remember a couple of scenes, and that's it. Like, I don't remember the whole movie. But I was 5 then. I'm surprised I even remember that.
No, I think that Ghostbusters 2 was an underwhelming sequel. It has its moments, but overall that film is definitely a lacking compared to the original.
Ghostbusters 2, very interesting for me. You had actually put it on sometime
right before
I think in November.
Movie. Yeah.
We were just hanging out here and you put on Ghostbusters 2 and I said, "Oh, you know what? I haven't seen this movie in a long time." And I'm watching it and I'm going, "I don't remember any of this." Got through almost the entire movie and I'm like, maybe I never saw this movie before. I had to go home and check my records. I went into my book, and I'm like, and there it is, Ghostbusters 2, without a check mark. Because if I saw it, and I'm like, I never saw Ghostbusters 2. And I'm a little upset about it, because had I known I didn't see it, I would have made sure I watched the entire film. There were parts where I got up and walked away for a little while.
Yeah.
And to this day, I have to watch the movie again from beginning to end to legitimately be able to check it off. I missed at least 5 minutes here and there within the movie. Okay. And that's not enough for me. So, but I was like, look at that. It's just, it just comes out that, you don't get this, you don't see everything. You can't see everything. And, sometimes you miss, like the other day, I had seen every Police Academy movie except Police Academy 2. It's the only one not checked off in my book, and I finally rectified that early this year and said, I got to see Police Academy 2. What kind of idiot sees part 1 and 3 through 6 or 7, whatever it is. So yeah, actually worked. It actually makes sense. I'm glad I saw at least 95% of Ghostbusters 2 before we went to see Ghostbusters Afterlife. And I know when we did an episode earlier in our YouTube career, we did an episode where we went through our top 10 movies of our top 10 favorite movies of all time, and you would have done a good
review of
the original Ghostbusters. So if anybody's interested in what Chris,
we did like a little synopsis of why we enjoy the films, each film.
So if anybody's interested in what Chris really thinks about the original Ghostbusters, go to that episode,
and you can find that,
and you'll see all that.
So I mean, there was talks of
So let's talk about before the movie. Like talks and this and that, and getting like previews and stuff like that.
Oh, so I mean,
because this movie was significantly delayed.
This movie was delayed by COVID, as were multiple other films. This was supposed to come out in 2020. There was supposed to be a sequel to Ghostbusters 2 for a very long time. They could never get it off the ground. They could never get a script good enough.
Sequel in continuity.
In continuity to try to keep it like all the guys together. I know Aykroyd and Ramis tried hard to really kind of get stuff done. They could never really get it off the ground.
Which is surprising.
Yeah, I just think that every time they were pitching a story, I don't know if it was something that the studio was giving a green light to. I don't know if there was trouble trying to get Bill to come back and do it.
Could be. And because at the end of the day, the 80s was the prime time period to do like multiple sequels upon sequels of franchises and just, ride that train. Like I said, police, 7 Police Academy movies.
Right.
Friday the 13th movies.
Whatever
the genre was, whether it was comedy or.
But for the 80s, it was a long time between sequels. I mean, you had the original in '84, and the sequel didn't come out till '89. That was 5 years, which was a big time difference for at least that time for a sequel to come out.
And then we get to the horrendous reboot.
And so then for a while there was nothing that was done. Before they even did the reboot, there was a video game that came out a few years back, and that was actually considered in canon because they got all of the original voice cast to come back and do the video game.
What system was that for?
It was next gen. I think it was like the Xbox 360, I think. Okay. But one of the great things about that was it was written by Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd.
The
story for the video game was written by those guys.
Yeah, and I can see Bill Murray not getting involved in that. Like I think he probably is the biggest
name out of all of them. Yeah.
Dan Aykroyd is probably a quick second.
And then unfortunately, a few years back, everybody remembers Harold Ramis unfortunately has passed away.
Now they also had a Ghostbusters cartoon, didn't they?
They did a Ghostbusters cartoon in the 80s, which was great. I grew up on that as a kid.
I never saw any of it, but I knew it existed.
It was fun. It kind of it loosely picks up after the first film.
Now, do you think any of the original cast were voices in that cartoon?
No, none of them were.
Okay, and I even think there might have been some Ghostbusters comic books out there. Probably.
I think that there were short-lived. Yeah, but I think you're right about that. But and then we come to the 2016 reboot that came out,
all female cast
with the Paul. What's Paul's name? He's the director. Fig, not Fig.
No, not Fig.
I'm
different director from the other movies.
Different director, yeah. He directed. I mean, he's a well-known director. He usually directs a lot of comedies that people have seen and know him.
And
know him very well.
I forget all the people.
I'm pretty sure he directed Bridesmaids.
It was McCarthy.
Yeah, Kristen Wiig was in it. Leslie Jones was in it.
I want to say Queen Latifah. Am I going?
No, that's Leslie. No, you're not. No, that's wrong. I think it was Leslie Jones, I believe.
Oh, Leslie Jones. Okay, and
Kate McKinnon.
And the secretary was a guy.
Was Chris Hemsworth.
Chris Hemsworth, who I don't know. He might have been. I don't know. I remember him being one of the better parts of the film.
Oh, he was funny in it.
Goofy.
But I mean, overall, that film
was horrendous.
Critically, it actually did well.
You did it really?
It actually got
critically
decent,
or box office?
No, critically, it got decent scores. Box office wise, it wasn't the home run that Sony was hoping for.
I think I kind of hated it.
So you didn't like the movie.
But did you like it?
There were parts of that film that I enjoyed. Overall, I wasn't thrilled with the movie, but there were certain parts that I actually thought was interesting, and I could see, where they were going with it. But
where the hell did I get Queen Latifah from?
I have no idea where you get things from. And then then after that, it was people were waiting to see what was going to end up happening. They were not going to be really going forward with the 2016
sequel. Thank God they didn't make a sequel to that.
What we end up getting is Jason Reitman, who is the son of Ivan Reitman, the original director of the first two films, steps up to the plate, writes a story, and wants to continue the storyline from Ghostbusters 2. And this is pretty much how we get to where we are today. The first teaser came out, and I remember the first teaser came out, and it was basically just like, it was the theme song of these guys going into, like, it was almost like the original, like dealing with the library from the original film, where they go in, and there's like that spooky, like, little soundtrack that they had. And it takes place in a farm field, and it's late at night. It was almost like a storm. It's windy, and you go into this barn, and there's a car with a car cover over it, and all of a sudden it lifts up a little bit, and you see the Ghostbuster logo on Ecto-1 in the barn. And I'm like, are they freaking doing another Ghostbusters film? Like, I had not heard about this thing. I think it was pretty much low key that this was happening. And then that came out. And then from there, everyone, like, speculation shot up as to what was going on with this.
And then, like, COVID hit and, like, things got delayed.
The film had been filmed. It had been filmed already.
They kept releasing, like...
They released one trailer.
Trailers.
They released a full trailer a few months. I think it was, like, around the holidays, around Christmas time of 2019. And the film was supposed to come out in, like, July of 2020. And that trailer came out, and it was a really good first teaser trailer, showing us kind of like what was going on. There was a hint at, you know, one of the Ghostbusters, like, grandkids, and then you find out it's, you know, Spengler's grandkid. Just really interesting, and it takes you away from the city. Like, like, the first thing that's shocking about this is that it's not in New York City. This is, like, you know, upstate New York. It seems like, or could be somewhere in the sticks.
Who knows, yeah.
You know, like, I don't know, like, where I shouldn't say upstate New York, but I mean it's somewhere not in the normal area of where we've been dealing with this.
And unfortunately, what we had to deal with was basically seeing trailers.
It was one trailer.
Seeing trailers, you know, over the course of time, when you're sitting there going like, okay, we know the movie's coming, but I've been watching the trailers for a year and a half now.
One trailer, and then finally.
And I'll be honest with you, I really enjoyed the trailer. I thought the trailer was really good, and in some parts, in some aspect, okay. So to me, the trailer was so good. I had very high expectations for the film, and I don't know that the actual film fulfilled my expectations. That's how good the trailer was.
I really thought they did a great job with the teaser trailer.
Yeah.
I think it really hooked you in. It started the fan machine of everybody thinking about, okay, what's the storyline going to be? How are they going to go with this? You know, and in the teaser you get like the Shandor mines. So Ivo Shandor, of course, is spoken about in the first Ghostbusters film, and from there
that was in the preview.
That was in the preview. Like, you just see, like, they look at, like, you know, they see like a mine, and there's a title over it, and it says Shandor. So, okay. Like, if you catch that little, I
didn't catch that in the preview. Yeah, but even if I did, I don't know that I would have made the connection of Shandor.
So, like, as soon as you see that, like, you know it's going to relate.
Is that name from Ghostbusters 1?
From the Ghostbusters 1
and 2?
Yeah. No, just 1.
Just 1. Okay.
Yeah, Shandor was the guy that made the high rise.
Right. Okay.
So designed the high rise.
How many times have you seen Ghostbusters?
Oh, I can't keep count anymore. Like, you're talking
more than 10, more than 20.
Oh my God, probably
more than 30,
more than 50.
Okay, more than 50. Okay, I've probably seen the original Ghostbusters maybe 3 times, maybe. And
yeah, it's a detail you're not going to pick up.
And I'm sure the last time I saw it was a real long time ago. So yeah, so I mean. That's like one of those little Easter egg things that you're going to be like,
oh, and I went nuts over that.
And I'm going to be like, huh? And you're going to be like, don't you know? Let me explain this Easter egg to you, and then I'll appreciate it.
Because so I mean that it was a logical way for them to kind of tie in the original film, and weave it into this, but also give us something new.
Yeah, and I think it's good because they bridged it.
Yeah,
very well. They made it just not just an independent story. They kind of
to me, like, there was just enough
the next generation, but it's got its ties,
right? I thought they tied it in well. I thought there was just enough nostalgia in this to satisfy the fans of the original film, and then also giving us something new to kind of pique our interest, and then hopefully get something more out of this. As in a sequel or two.
We've got the preview, and then where did we see? We wound up seeing Ghostbusters Afterlife.
We saw it at Island 16
twice.
Yeah, we saw it twice.
But the first time we saw it,
we saw it at Island 16 preview night.
Island 16, which is the big showcase cinema multiplex by us. But the second time we saw it, we saw it at the Sayville movie theater, which had been closed
since COVID.
For COVID, for over a year and a half.
Yep. So now we're talking. This was like its grand reopening.
Yeah, we were very upset that the Sayville movie theater closed, but we kind of had a feeling it would, because I think all the movie theaters closed.
Yeah. I mean, this is a small mom and pop
But we were
theater,
afraid that it was never going to reopen. It's just one of these mom and pop movie theaters, which are far and few between on Long Island now these days, with great popcorn. Used to be better, but great popcorn.
And they heavily rely, of course, on people coming in.
Yeah, and then it finally, and regular movie theaters had opened up.
Yes.
Way earlier in 2020.
They were already open for a year. Because they started opening up in September of 2020.
Oh, really? Because
we started going
back to the movies, I think, very late 2020.
Yeah.
And so that entire duration, we're going, almost every movie we saw was at Island 16. And then finally, Sava was having we did a couple of drive-in.
We did some drive-ins, yeah.
But we saw that the Sava movie theater was opening back up. And the popcorn is...
It's pretty decent, pretty good.
It's good. It's better than it was before they closed. I don't know if it's good as it was way back, because way back it used to be off the scale. But it's better than it was before it closed.
Yes.
So we got good popcorn back.
So it's nice to have that.
So that was, and it was actually, we were actually really excited that the first movie we were going to see in the brand new not brand new, but the reopened Sable Theater was going to be Ghostbusters Afterlife, and I think we were really happy that it was going to be.
I was really happy with that. There's kind of like it was a special movie, and I thought they were very smart in marketing that to get a quote unquote blockbuster film in their theater.
And I think
that weekend.
We knew that it was going to be our 50th episode because even though at that point we had some movies to choose from, we were like, no. We want the 50th episode to be Ghostbusters Afterlife, and I'm very happy with that choice. And we've been going to Sayville since then a couple of times, and so hopefully they're open forever and for good.
So this film has a really good cast, and it's different from the original film in that it's relying more on a very younger generation compared to what the originals were, where you had these guys in their early 30s going through their doctorates at Columbia. You've got these kids in like high school that make a discovery about their grandfather, and their high school science teacher that's basically
played by Paul Rudd. Who from Ant-Man fame.
Yep, everyone knows him.
And pretty much looks almost exactly the same in every movie.
Oh my God,
never
ages, this guy.
We were watching Clueless the other night, which is one of my favorite films. Not tippity top, but I like that film a lot. But we were like, I'm like, there's Paul Rudd.
Yep.
And this movie's,
1990s.
Yeah, it's in the 90s. He looks almost exactly the same. It's hysterical.
I know.
And that,
this guy doesn't age.
He doesn't age. One day he's going to age. It's going to be like picture Dorian Gray. He's just going to turn into an old, decrepit old man. It's going to be pretty funny. But I don't know when that's going to happen. He's probably going to outlive me.
But he played a really great role. Had a lot of really good lines in it. Then we had this new actress. Well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say she's not new, but she's younger. Is McKenna Grace.
This is probably her biggest role.
I would think she was on a show, and I had it in my head before we started filming, and now I can't remember it. Of course, I've lost it. But
TV show?
Yeah,
or
she
like
was on a
Disney
series.
Show?
No. I think she was in a series, if I'm not mistaken. But I lost it.
And then you have the brother who was on Stranger Things.
Yep, Finn Wolfhard. So a lot of people know him. He's been around quite a bit. Obviously, was in Stephen King's It.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I remember him from Stephen King's It, and I really liked him.
He's very talented. So I think he's a very talented young actor.
When I actually saw him in the preview, that to me was one of the.
He was one of the polls.
Absolutely. Yeah, he was one of the polls.
Paul Rudd and Finn Wolfhard were the two names that I knew going into this. McKenna Grace, I did not. However, McKenna Grace probably steals the show. I think a lot of her scenes that she's in, I think she's fantastic in, like a really good young actress coming out of this.
Yeah, I would say, I think she's like the emotional focus.
Yes.
Of the film.
Big time.
Because I'll be honest with you, from the preview, it made it seem like Finn was going to be more of the focus of the film, and it turns out it wasn't him. He was in it
He's the older brother.
He was in it much less than I thought. Not that he wasn't in it, but
right.
I thought it was going to be more from his point of view, and
the
his
right.
And
the
it,
discovery
and it
of everything
really
wasn't him.
It really is from her point of view and from her experience.
Yeah.
You know, and he's obviously he's the older brother. He's there, but the movie is more focused on her.
And
even though I was surprised about that, the way it turned out, I was okay with that.
You know, with the storyline basically is that we get the beginning of the film. It's we find out that it's Egon has basically,
who is Harold Ramis.
Harold Ramis, of course. Unfortunately, not in this film. It's played by another actor. Actually, another famous actor actually does like his body double.
Oh, it's not just CG'd?
The face on him eventually at the end of the movie, yes, is CG'd.
Yeah. Okay.
But there's the person that like plays his body double. I am like killing myself that I can't remember the name of the actor. I want to say it was the guy from Shawshank Redemption, the guy who played the warden.
The warden or the top screw?
No, the warden.
The warden. Oh, maybe. Okay, I don't know.
I think it was him. I forget his name, but I think it was him. So anyway, basically, Egon has at this point in time left the Ghostbusters, kind of leaves them high and dry, as we find out later on from Ray, and he basically he gets obsessed with Shandor, Evil Shandor, after the Battle of the High Rise, and it just seems like he was really researching all of this and found out that like Shandor was doing some really bad stuff in this one town. He goes to it and basically dedicates the majority of his life to stopping what was coming, and we don't really get to get the full realization of that until later in the film, when everything starts to get discovered by his grandkids. And his one granddaughter is really, really smart. McKenna Grace, her character, you could just see the level of brilliance that she has from getting it probably from her grandfather. But her mom's like pretty much like down in the dumps. Has not had a relationship with her father in a very long time. The only thing that he passes away early in the film, and that he leaves her this house.
Yeah,
and she has no money, so she has to move out here. It's like just by pure necessity at this point in time.
Yeah, and I think one thing we figured out is that we're not 100% sure that the timeline makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
that the oldest child,
right,
is 15?
He's 15, I think. Yeah,
and at the time of Ghostbusters, we don't even think.
Well, even if you think Ghostbusters 2, so even you say if it was 89, right? So 89
in Ghostbusters 2, Egon
is not
married.
Doesn't seem to be married.
Doesn't seem to be married.
There's no mention of a wife or a child at that point in time. So we're assuming that he didn't have one. So let's just say
he gets married in 1990
and gets married. Yeah, right, in 90,
and then has a kid.
Right.
And then 15 years later, it's 2005.
Well, you have to decrease 15 years from 2021, which would have been what, 2006?
Right, 2006.
Right. So how old's the kid from 1990 to 2006? 16, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So could that be?
I don't know, because the mother is
she seems older than that.
Yeah, exactly.
The mother seems like she's in her like mid to late 30s.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like they.
Now listen, we know this is a nitpick. Right. This is a nitpick thing that we're looking at, but if we're examining the movie, and this is a deep dive as we always go into, timeline wise, it doesn't seem to really work out.
The kids should have been younger.
Could she have had a kid at a young age? Absolutely. But her age doesn't really match up with what they're projecting, because she would be at this point 10, 20. She would be like 31.
And she seems older than that.
And she seems older than that.
Yeah.
So again, is it possible? Absolutely 100%.
She should have been a little bit older, and I think the kids should have been a little bit younger. I don't think.
Or they could have just said that that he did have a family. You could have established it that by Ghostbusters 2 he did, and it just wasn't talked about.
And the only reason we even thought about it was because on the surface, it didn't seem to make sense. To us, it was apparent, like, wait a second. This is supposed to be Egon's grandkids. And the oldest kid is, 15 or 16 years old. And it's like, wait a second. And it takes place in present day, okay, which in reality would have been 2020 because the movie was supposed to come out in 2020.
Right.
So you lose a year now, and you just sit there. It just was like we had to think about it. Like, does this really make sense that everybody's this age based on when Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2 came out?
I'm sure.
To me, it seemed a little. The timing of the ages seemed to be off.
I'm sure Reitman was not thinking about people going back in time and doing the math on that.
Yeah, but
again,
we did.
It's a silly nitpick.
Silly nitpick.
It's something that can be discussed. It's definitely a discussion. That's not my biggest gripe with the film at all. It's just
no. I don't even consider that a gripe. I just consider that to be something that, like, just seemed a little off to me. It just didn't seem plausible that
it could have been thought about.
That's how it lined up.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if I know what my biggest gripe of the film is, because at the end of the day, I think I liked it.
I enjoyed the film. I mean, overall, I think this was a really good film. I think it was a really good reintroduction of this. There
were a couple things that bothered me, but like I said, all the things that like it's like the the conveniences, the things that don't make sense. It's almost every movie has a certain number of those. It's just a question of is how many are there, how big of a convenience, how big of a nonsensical thing is it, and how many of them are there? Because when the whole movie is full of them, it detracts from the film.
Right.
Because then you sit there and say, no, this movie does really.
And I don't think we had that. I really don't think there was that.
I think we just had a couple of things.
There might have been a couple things, but it's just to me.
But overall, I don't think it was enough to detract from the film.
No, I don't think so either. And I think, to me, I thought the acting in this was well done. I think there's just such a. I've said this before.
Because too many of that is sloppy screenwriting. That's indicative of a sloppy, a lazy screenwriter who doesn't care about being sensible and logical, and but if you have somebody who's trying to do a good job, at the end of the day it'll never be perfect, and that's where those couple things get in. But so go ahead. You were saying.
No, I think so. To me, like, I've said this before when we've spoken. I think there's this generation of young actors that are coming up in film and in television nowadays too, and in streaming. That are just in a class of their own. Like, I just feel like when I was growing up, and then even when I was a young kid, watched older movies, I feel like the kids that were acting were few and far between, had real talent. And I feel like this generation of kids, there are just so many good young actors coming up. And to see talent like Finn Wolfhard and Grace McKenna, and then there was even Grace's friend. So Grace,
is it Grace McKenna or McKenna Grace?
McKenna Grace. I screwed that up. Yeah, McKenna Grace.
It's very easy to screw up.
Because Grace could be a first.
Because she's not a household name.
Not yet.
Right,
no.
right. Now, incidentally, McKenna Grace has a credit at the end for
singing one of the songs.
And that was one of the things I was like, is she a child singer, or did she just kind of branch out and I'm
going to say she branched out, but I have no idea if she has a singing career or not.
But it actually is. She actually does a really good job.
On the
end credits song. her she sings the song during probably one of the songs during the end credits.
Yeah,
and I actually, I thought that was pretty impressive. I thought that was impressive.
And the other kid who was a little bit more of the comic relief was McKenna Grace's friend that she meets. This kid podcast.
Yeah. Now, is he Asian or Spanish? I forget.
That I don't know. I just know I can't remember his name, but I just know his name was podcast in the movie. But what was great about him is that this kid was literally a walking podcast. He literally would walk around with a microphone and just like interview or like just talk about topics with people.
Yeah, he was kind of funny. He
was
a little goofy, a little goofy off the wall.
But to me, he was definitely he was a little bit of the comic relief aspect. It was just a really funny character. I thought, and then he becomes friendly with McKenna, and
those are really like the three kids in the movie.
Yeah.
Like there isn't like a fourth kid in there. It's like it's really just these are the three kids.
Yeah.
Around.
Well, I mean, Finn meets.
Finn
meets a girl that he's
Finn
interested
meets a girl at the retro burger place where people are rolling around on roller skates, which I kind of like.
Yeah.
And they kind of hook up, and then so you have the four kids.
So those are like those are your main four.
And I almost wanted to. I was like, is that Zendaya?
No.
And it's not. Nope. But I almost feel like it could have been Zendaya's younger sister.
She's been in a couple of things. She was in Grown Ups. She was in the show Black Lightning. Those are like the two main things that I know her from. But decent, she's a good young actress as well. And the funny things about this is that the kids don't know anything about Ghostbusters. So when you get to, this scene is in the trailer when Paul Rudd's looking at the ghost trap and he thinks it's a replica, and he finds out that it's not, and that it's a real thing.
And he's like, "Who are you?"
Right.
And at the end of the day, they don't know who they are.
They don't know. And the funny thing is, like, he shows them this video, of course on YouTube, and it's the footage from the original Ghostbusters movie of when the ghost hit Manhattan. And it's just amazing that the kids just don't know anything about this. Now, there is a mention of it in the car when...
Because what's the last name? Egon what?
Spengler.
Yeah, it to me, it seemed a little odd, like McKenna Grace goes to her mother and says, why didn't you tell me my grandfather was Egon Spengler? And I'm like, you knew you had a grandfather. I'm sure you knew his name.
But you maybe not. But it seemed. But they had a falling out. But
he's Grandpa Spengler,
right? But if my point is that if she had broken away by the time her daughter was born, and she never really spoke about her father, then she might not know at all who her grandfather is.
Okay. She
might not have ever even known what his last name was, because I'm sure her name is the husband's last name. I can't see that. I can understand why she might not have known who it was. My thing is just kids of this generation, like, how do they not know who the Ghostbusters were? But then you hear it in the car. There's like McKenna talks to her brother Finn and is saying to him, like, our grandfather was a Ghostbuster, was Egon Spengler. And he's like, those ghost stories from New York? Those old tales of New York. And he goes, yeah, they were real. Because it seems like it was almost like a fairy tale.
Yeah.
Like it's almost presented as if this is how they pictured it.
However, do keep in mind that a lot of people from today's generation, or even any generation, doesn't really know a lot about stuff from before
they were born. Yeah.
There's
before their own history.
There's not a lot of impetus for people to delve into stuff from prior, because it's not relevant to their daily existence for the most part. They live for today. They live for what's going on today. They know everything that's going on today.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't surprise me. When Paul Rudd says you don't even know you don't even know what this is. Like, they're seeing it for the first time.
So McKenna Grace's character, she starts to see things happening in the farmhouse. She ends up, for some reason, playing a chess game with a ghost, and she doesn't know what's going on. She just knows that she's playing a chess game and the pieces are moving, and it's not her that's moving them. And then eventually she finds a PKE meter, and she starts taking that, and it leads her to the basement underneath the shed.
Yeah.
And that's where she sees Spengler's workshop, where he had the proton packs and the jumpsuits and everything was in there. And then she finally starts to understand that it's her grandfather's ghost that's actually helping her.
Yeah. Now, one thing I think they didn't do very well in this film is that they made a specific point about McKenna Grace's character not believing in ghosts and the supernatural,
because she says it,
right? She says it that's ridiculous, and that's asinine, and it's it goes against science and all that stuff. Whatever. It's she has a stance that's,
right,
fairy tale craziness nonsense. And then she's presented with evidence that ghosts exists, and she instantaneously accepts it, and then goes on with it from there. They never give like a realization of her switch.
right.
She's like, I don't believe in that, and then she does because it's there.
Well, I almost feel like
And they like you don't see that click, like turning the switch on and off.
the realization for her.
Yeah, there's nothing. There's not even any reaction to her that oh wow, ghosts really do exist. I didn't believe in that, but now I do.
I think as silly as it was, I think the chess scene sets that up, because it's not just her making one move; it's multiple moves get played.
Yeah.
To the point where one of the chess pieces then gets flung past her.
Yeah, I just show that she's not surprised by anything that's going on.
But I think that she's just that type of kid, like where she's not all of a sudden gonna freak out over the fact that like a ghost is.
Yeah, I don't know that I expected her to freak out. I just expected to see some sort of spark of like, oh, there is ghosts, and they just bypass that. Well, and I found that odd. Like, don't make a point of her saying, I don't believe in this, and then go to a point where she does, and there's no transition.
You know what? I wonder if to me, part of the transition, I think, was also when they found and tracked down that ghost, the blue guy, the blue ghost. What the heck was his name?
The blue ghost?
Remember the guy that was like, he was eating like metal? He was like chewing on metal.
Oh, is he blue?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's basically,
in my head I wanted him to be green because I always consider him
because you look at Slimer.
It's this movie Slimer.
It's this movie Slimer, 100%.
Okay, blue, yeah.
And this guy is actually played by Josh Gad.
They gave him some sort of goofy name.
Muncher.
Muncher, okay.
I think it was Muncher. So when they track Muncher down, there's a part where Podcast is with McKenna Grace, and he's like, "Aren't you like freaking out right now with all this?" And she's like, she says a line in there, and it's about like she clamps down under stress or with something. She makes a point to say that I don't know, like she almost like that she's not going to freak out over something like this.
Right.
And I can't remember the exact wording of it, but I'm wondering if that was the explanation. But I understand your point. Where like we should have seen like a realization from a girl who's probably like
at the
12,
end,
13 years old.
A girl that scientific accepting ghosts would kind of turn your understanding of the universe a little upside down.
Right.
And you didn't get that, like,
because like if this is true, then what else could be?
Right. She just went from I don't believe in ghosts. That's insane. Oh, okay, I do. And it was like monotone from one. There was no like, oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I can see that. But the other nice things in this is that we get a real huge nostalgia moment with Ecto 1.
Yeah.
Ecto 1 gets fired up, gets driven out. And then the really cool thing is we start to see some new toys that the Ghostbusters had, or at least Egon had been toying with or playing with, that we never saw in the originals. Mm-hmm. So we see like this like remote controlled trap that's on wheels, that's radio controlled, which I thought was really interesting and cool.
I thought that was kind of a cool concept. I found it a little odd that Podcast was able to figure out, like it was like, oh, this is great, I got it. And it's like he figured out how to maneuver it, and they figured out that there's a door that at the bottom of the car that this is where it goes in and out. Yeah. And the one of the few things I found a little hard to believe. This is one of the things I found a little hard to believe in this film, is that this little car that they were doing, operating by remote control, they were able to keep this car from turning over or flipping over. Like they instantaneously able to maneuver this car going 60 miles an hour. It's a little car. It's like a little,
it's a little remote control car.
This little car is going 60 miles an hour, and So you got one guy in the big car with the remote, and they got the other little car following the car, and they're able to, like, get that little car to go 60 miles an hour and keep up with the other car and go where they needed to go, including turns, including dirt roads that obviously have rocks on them. They weren't on, like, what do you call it? Like clean paved,
right?
Highway or even clean paved streets. I mean, they were going over a little bit of. I think when they started getting into the dirt road, rough terrain, I'm like, all this thing has to do is hit a decent sized rock, while it's, and it's gonna go flying, and it never once turned over. And I was just like, okay, I mean, at the end of the day, you need it to not turn over to get through the film.
Story.
But it was like, I'm just like, okay, they're just a little too adept at at these maneuvers that they're doing, and it's going a little too seamlessly. I'm just like, come on. I mean, did you ever play with a remote control car?
Yeah.
I did too. They don't really go where you want to go. Like, you're sitting there in the room, in a room with, and you're having trouble keeping it from bumping into furniture. This thing is like, it's weaving in and out and doing turns and going.
I'm gonna say the directional skill, like the components within this car were pretty advanced. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay, they might have been a little better than the stuff we got. So I mean, but it was like, I was like, okay, like I could picture Egon being like, okay, I got it because I built this. But the kids were just like, oh, this is great. Look at this thing. Okay, here we go. Zoom. I'm like, wow, you're doing like really high speed maneuvers.
Kids nowadays pick up things a lot faster too.
Okay, we'll give it to that. we'll give it to that. We'll chalk it up to.
We're going to chalk it up to the new age millennials. The technology is their friend. I liked when McKenna Grace meets up with Paul Rudd for the first time, and she starts like talking about the seismograph, like all like the charts that he has in his back room.
Yeah, it is, and it is kind of it was a little bit of a plot convenience in the fact that Paul Rudd, who is a high school,
it seemed like he was like a substitute teacher.
He's a high school science teacher.
Yeah,
but he happens to be a seismologist. And McKenna Grace apparently knows all about seismology, apparently about and a lot of other things as well. And it was just like, all right. And it just worked into the fact that because it played into like the manifestation of what was going on, where it's like, they're talking about like, it almost seems like there's earthquakes hitting this town. Right. And it was just like, I'm like, okay, what are the odds that everybody just happens to be seismologists and know about seismology? I'm like, okay, whatever, I'll let that slide. But it just seemed like, like, oh, I happen to be a seismologist. I'm like, oh, well, isn't that convenient? Now, there was one thing about Paul Rudd, and this is one of my funny criticisms about Paul Rudd. There's a scene with Paul Rudd where they're playing with the
trap,
the ghost trap.
Oh, when they're trying to power it up.
And I'm like sitting there going like they're trying to power it up and this and that, and I'm like, that didn't seem like the smart, safe thing to do, because it's almost like they're going out of their way, because if you're Paul Rudd and you know that this isn't a replica anymore, and you're pretty sure there's a ghost in there, I don't know that you would want to release it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that you would want to do that. So to me, them releasing the ghost, which unfortunately I think was something that needed to happen to further the story.
The story to keep
it's
going,
like,
right.
Like, why would they do that? That's not very smart or safe. But the funny thing, what they did was when they were hooking up the jumper cables,
yes,
to the
trap,
they were like, okay, it's hooked up to a bus. They were like, okay, fire up the bus. And at the end of the day, if you know anything about jumper cables, you know that the vehicle that you're using to be the source of the charge doesn't actually have to be on, right, in order to do a charge. And a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people think the car should be on. It doesn't need to be on. And my thing is like, okay, a lot of people don't know that, so a lot of people aren't going to pick that up as something that doesn't make sense in the movie. But Paul Rudd as a science teacher,
Right. Should know.
would know that. But I can see them sitting there going like, maybe there's one guy in the boardroom going, he doesn't need to charge it on. He goes, and Paul Rudd would know that. But they're saying, well, most other people don't know that, so we're going to dumb it down.
We're just going to turn the car on.
We're going to dumb it down to make it play better for the audience. For the 99% of the audience out there that actually thinks you would need to turn the car on to do that.
Because what's going to happen if they did that scene where he doesn't turn it on? The majority of the audience is like, well, he didn't turn the car on. How is he going to be able to jump this?
Right.
Yeah.
So this is a case where you got to dumb down the movie to meet the expectations of the idiotic fan, the average idiotic moviegoer who doesn't really know how things work. But I thought that was kind of funny. I'm sitting there going like, he doesn't need to turn the bus on. And I'm like, and he should know that. But then I'm like, but everybody else doesn't know that. That's why they did it that way. Anyhow, but that didn't detract from the film at all. I just found that to be like an odd little thing, like in the real world that you wouldn't need to do that, and he would know that.
So we get to the Shandor mines, and it seems that within the Shandor mines, he was basically like the guy Ivo Shandor was basically digging up a lot of like old burials or stuff that like within, they were constructing something within that mine.
Like there was like a lot of like carvings on like,
yes,
like I mean, I'm assuming those carvings are like
were there
hundreds of years,
yes,
maybe thousands of years old. Like
right.
This was like an ancient area.
It was a discovery that like Shandor I think made.
Yeah.
And Ivo Shandor in this is played by J.K. Simmons. Remember?
Who does J.K. Simmons play?
He plays Ivo Shandor. He was the guy in like the glass.
Oh
coffin.
yeah. He's the guy in the coffin. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, J.K. Simmons really is unrecognizable in that role, I think.
You didn't know it at first.
I didn't know it till the credits.
Yeah.
I'm like, J.K. Simmons, because, at the end, because I'm a credits guy, got to read the credits as much as you can, especially who played what roles.
Right.
And I'm like, J.K. Simmons, who the hell was he in the movie? And you were like, oh, he's that guy. I'm like, wow, he really was, because he was all made up.
Yeah, he had like hair and everything on. He had like facial hair.
Now, one of the things related to where J.K. Simmons was, one of the things in the movie that I thought was a little hard to believe is like, apparently like the top of that mine shaft is a local hangout for kids.
Yes.
And at the top of that mine shaft is like a chair or
an elevator.
An elevator that goes down to the mine shaft. And it is operable.
Yes.
So I can tell you right now, if that thing has been abandoned for as many decades as that mine shaft has been abandoned, not only would this generation of kids hanging out on top of that mine shaft for whatever they do and party, get drunk, would have gone down to the bottom of that mine shaft multiple times, their older brothers and their older cousins and their uncles and their parents, and maybe even, depending on how long it's been abandoned,
right.
Every generation of kids that have been hanging out in that town, that hung out at that mine shaft, would have been down that shaft in there. They made it seem like when they went down that shaft for the first time,
no one had done
that's the first time anybody had ever gone down. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, are you kidding me? Like that to me was like, oh, we've never been down here. We've been hanging out here all our lives. We've never gone down. Are you kidding me? That would have been like the makeout. Like, all right, anybody who wants to make out, go down in there and find a spot. Like I mean, chances are they were conceived in that mine shaft by their parents who hung out there when they were kids. You know what I'm saying? Because they talk a lot about how like a lot of people in the town are like, what do you think, second, third, fourth generation?
Yeah.
Like these are people that these
that never left.
Yeah, so yeah.
So the mine plays a significant role because we figure out where the earthquakes are coming from, and it's coming from the mine. And then when the kids go down and they investigate that, we figure out why, and it's because there almost seems to be an uprising coming from out of.
It's got to be like one of those, like, this is like a nexus of.
It's like a nexus of like a portal, I guess, like
right,
a portal to like another dimension or something. Right. Basically comes up, and
where they could come into our Earth dimension or whatever. Dimension,
right? And then what's happening is Egon had figured this out, and he had set up multiple proton packs, these neutron wands, to basically
keep it at bay,
to force them down. It would reach a certain level of, I guess, pressure of where these things would come up, and the setup that he had, the machines would sense it, and then they would shoot the streams and cross the streams, which was the most important thing, and it would shoot it down enough to ward off whatever was coming. But this is where the earthquakes keep coming from, and they finally realized that. And what ends up happening is, at one point, when Paul Rudd released the Ghost, one of those ghosts happens to be the Keymaster, and the other one, of course, is the Gatekeeper.
Right.
And
one or the other gets.
Paul Rudd gets
the mother, and the other one gets Paul Rudd at the Walmart.
At the Walmart. The Walmart scene. It was great.
Now, the one thing that this was the one convenience thing that I found a little odd, is that, like...
Oh, they found him so fast.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, the Keymaster was at the Walmart, I think, already, and Paul Rudd just happened to be shopping at Walmart and goes in, and, that's when he gets him. And it almost seemed like there was nobody. There was almost no cars in the parking lot, but I think there was a decent amount of people in the Walmart.
Well, I think when the Marshmallow Men started coming around, I think that started freaking people out. You started hearing screams in the store.
Okay,
So they all started. It seems. I think at that point in time, a lot of people started booking it. Yeah. But then Paul Rudd didn't really realize what was going on.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, he sees the Devil Dog.
That's
not the name. That's not the name.
No, but it's like, it was one of those weird things where it's like you're sitting there like, like from a story wise, you kind of want Paul Rudd to be possessed by one of the dogs, whatever.
Right.
But it's like because I'll be honest with you, I think whether it was I think it was in Ghostbusters, where the dog went out to get Rick Moranis.
Right.
In this case, Paul Rudd accidentally comes across the dog. It should have been the other way around. Like, the dog should have been going to where Paul Rudd was, not Paul Rudd just happening to be where the dog is.
Right.
I was like, I know, I understand where you want Paul Rudd to be one of the dogs.
Yeah.
But I'm like, to me, this is just, Walmart saying we're paying a lot of money to be in this movie, and this is how it's going to happen.
Right.
Whether it makes sense or not. So now you get to the Marshmallow Men.
Which was a great little scene.
Which is actually really funny, and they actually play that up a lot in the preview, because that's kind of funny. But
and just, of course, like, that's part of the nostalgia. But this was their Baby Yoda moment. This was, let's take the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, who was this giant villain in the first film, and let's turn him into like this little cute little, almost like an action figure.
Yeah.
Okay.
All the little Stay Puft marshmallows in the bags become like little Stay Puft Marshmallow Men. They're just running around doing all sorts of stuff. Now, the fact that, so one of the things I thought was odd was, in my head, I'm going like, okay, in Walmart, all the Stay Puft marshmallow bags would all be in one place, but they made it seem like they were almost sprouting
in different areas.
Yeah. But maybe there was some end displays.
There could have been end displays. Right.
I'm like, okay.
I mean, in a Walmart, typically you're going to have like a general location for everything, but then there might be end cap displays of stuff. So they could have been.
Right. And the reason why I say that, because they make it look like Paul Rudd showed up in the aisle with the Stay Puft marshmallows right at the moment that they started to come alive. Like, the first bag came alive. So it's like, okay, maybe all the bags come alive, but like, they would have all originated from that spot and then spread out. Whereas almost like the first bag came alive, but then all of a sudden some other people came from somewhere else. I'm like, all right, like, it's a Walmart. There's an aisle for food. It's not like, every aisle is its own aisle.
Exactly.
So to me, it was a little odd. But, at the end of the day, it worked. But there was one aspect of the Stay Puft Marshmallow that I thought was a little odd, that there was a building in the town that had a mural of the giant of a large Stay Puft.
But that's the
Marshmallow
logo
Man.
for this Mr. That's Mr. Stay Puft.
Yeah, I know, but why would that be on a building in the town? I don't want to say it was graffiti because it was too big to be graffiti. It seemed out of place. Like that there would be a building in town
them there.
with a giant
Maybe they manufactured there.
I
Who
don't
knows?
know. I was just like, there's a giant Stay Puft Marshmallow Man on one of the sides of the buildings. I'm like, why would that be there?
Maybe that was painted there after '84. Maybe it was painted after the first film. It was like, hey, cool, look at that marketing that we just had of a giant Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in New York City.
And there was one building in the town that had like a name on it, and I forget the name what it was because we saw the movie so long ago. But it had like a name on it somewhere, and I'm like, and I remembered that name, and when we went through the credits. One of the executive producers.
Right, the name was on the building. That's
so
right. It was like the town hall or something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that. It was
yeah.
on one of those buildings.
It was like an official type government building or something like that. But I was like, I just remember like seeing the name and I'm like, I don't know what that name is, but I wonder if that name means anything. So I kept it in my head, and I made sure, at least by the second viewing, to really see if that name matched anybody, and it was one of these, and that's just one of those goofy little Easter eggs that they put in, and 99.99% of the people never catch, but the filmmakers don't care because it made them happy.
For them, it was a little something.
Yeah, a little bit of, I don't know what do you call it.
Well, so Paul Rudd,
not fan service, but actually like producer service.
Yeah, it's almost like just something for them to live in the movie. So once Paul Rudd ends up becoming possessed. He ends up going back to the mine, and he screws with the proton packs, and this way now the entities can start to pop through. And one of the main ones that comes through, of course, is Gozer. So Gozer returns, and
Gozer is not in the second Ghostbusters.
No,
Gozer is only
in the first one. So this is where you're going to come into one of those conundrums of, okay, was it too much to bring back the original villain? Like this is this a common thing with reboots where they bring back something from the original film that's...
The question is whether it was a bad idea to bring back the original vision as opposed to doing something brand new?
Right. And I think if they would have destroyed her in the same way, I would have said yes.
I think I was okay with going
because of how they deal with it, because it just ties into, and again, you're tying into the history of what the original film was all about. But again, this is what Egon was preparing for. It's like what happened to them in '84 was a prelude almost to this coming again.
Yeah, it's the final battle with Gozer. The Ghostbusters
because Gozer was just defeated for that time period. Gozer wasn't destroyed, and I think Egon figured that out, and that's why he was getting so nervous. My biggest gripe with this film is, at one point, McKenna Grace gets on the phone and calls the number from the original commercial for Ghostbusters,
which apparently is still
in service,
and
it's now
direct line to Dan Aykroyd.
It's now Ray's Occult phone number, which again is a shout out to Ghostbusters 2. And
that's her one phone call from jail.
That's her one phone call
She's
from jail.
She's not going to call her mother.
Nope, she calls Ray.
Call the Ghostbusters number and hope it works.
And Ray talks to her, and she's like, you knew my grandfather. Basically, what happened? And I don't buy the story. My biggest gripe is this. I just don't buy that Egon would have basically left them, as Ray puts it, that he basically left them like the night with their equipment, with Ecto-1, was talking crazy nonsense, and just leaving. And these guys never following him, never checking in on him to see what was going on. They were basically just like, forget you. And I just don't buy that. I feel like these guys were so close. They would, and I think Egon has given himself enough credibility.
They would
maybe
give him
first,
the benefit of
give him
the
the benefit of
doubt.
the doubt. Like maybe you wouldn't understand what he was talking about, and maybe you had to see it for yourself. But I think you would have at least gone to visit, and so that Egon could show them what was going on.
Yeah. See, and this is a scenario where it's like it didn't make sense. It's hard to buy,
Right.
But
they did it to move.
It satisfied the premise of the film.
And the hard part is
he is separate from.
You're circling around an actor that can't be within the film, and that's the hard part about this. And I understand that. It's just I feel like they could have possibly written that a little bit better, a little bit cleaner, to make it more believable. You know, because like these guys didn't really fall out on bad terms. Like you don't see that, so you have to, you're taking everything with a grain of salt. That what Ray's telling you is 100% accurate, and so we kind of just have to go with that. And that almost leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And obviously, everything gets redeemed in the end of this movie, and we'll talk about that shortly. But for the time being, you hear that, and it's like, really, like. We're making Egon out to be almost like the bad guy. Like, and he's painted out to be the bad guy. Like, he left his family for all of this. He left his Ghostbuster family for this. So it's like it's him really being pushed to being seen as the one who's at fault. And the only one who is like taking his side or just seeing things from his perspective is his granddaughter.
Yeah.
And so you really see this bond that's being built in between them, and she's trying to really find out what happened to her grandfather and why he left them. And I think, in that case, for that emotional component to it, I see why they did that, and then especially when we get to the end of the movie, we'll discuss that. But that obviously triggers Ray to be like, call up the guys. And eventually they'll make their way, but we'll talk about that at the end. So
now there was a part in there when they get to Egon's house, the kids, and there's all sorts of stuff around, and they find that was it a Mayan death whistle, something like that?
Oh yes.
It was. I'm not sure if it was. Mayan,
it was some. Like
some sort of
an older civilization.
Incan. Maybe it was Incan. I think it was maybe an Incan death whistle or a Mayan death whistle. I forget. But it was like somebody saw it, and they're like, "Oh, that's a Mayan death whistle." And I'm just like, "Okay." Almost nobody would know what that is. That would be like, that's like in the realm of like, Indiana Jones,
like archaeology,
total, hardcore, deep archaeology. I'm like that would not be just a household item that you walk into someone's house and say, "Oh, that's what that is."
I know what that is.
So I was like, all right, but but I enjoyed the concept of it. But it should have been like, oh, someone should have said, "Oh, by the way, this is and then when she was like, "Oh, I never heard of that."
Right.
And then the other part in there that, in my opinion, was very convenient is when Podcast is like looking through one of the books, and very conveniently falls upon the one page that explicitly explains the whole deal of Gozer and the gatekeeper and the keymaster. And
but did he do that, or they were researching that, and that's when she got her brother involved?
I just think they were. It just looked like they were perusing.
Because I don't.
And even if they were trying to research, like they just there's a book, and I found a page that explains everything about all these people that we're dealing with, and it's just like, all right, that's convenient to just, like...
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to rewatch that part again, because I feel like I don't know if they stumbled upon it or they started to do a little more research. Because I feel like when McKenna went into the basement and she saw the maps and everything that Egon had, she could then, from the mines, research the mines. That's going to take her to Ivo Shandor and... probably like the older civilizations that were there, so I could see her figuring out all that stuff with Gozer.
Yeah, I mean, if they had given enough time, they just made it seem like they picked up a book and look here's a picture of the.
No, I agree. Like, and I'm wondering were there scenes?
All right, that was really fast.
I'm wondering were there scenes that may have been filmed or shot, and just for time purposes, they ended up having to cut it just to speed the movie along, because this movie clocked in around like 2 hours.
Yeah,
I think, and that could have been a studio thing. We're like, all right, we need 2-hour movie. That's all you got, right? So I'm wondering if that was there. Not saying it excuses anything, but I can understand.
It was just one of those.
Want to see something.
Yeah, just one of those examples of like a really convenient thing that you sit there and say, well, that really wouldn't happen, or they wouldn't find that fast, or at all.
Google. Google shows everything.
Yeah, they weren't Googling anything. They were just like, oh, let me just grab a book off the shelf and see if that helps me figure something out. Oh, look at that, Gozer. Here's the whole chapter on Gozer.
I don't think it was that fast or simple. But I do agree with you. I think a lot of that was done off screen, and you just had to buy into the fact that they figured all this out. But eventually they get to.
No, I thought it was, you used a funny choice of words before, and I like you when you said so Paul Rudd gets inhabited by the gatekeeper, and then he starts to screw around with the beans.
Yes.
And then I'm sitting there going, as soon as you started to say that, I'm saying in my head, I'm going, doesn't he screw around with the keymaster?
The gatekeeper?
Yeah, because
that happens too.
Yeah, the Paul Rudd character and the mother character become possessed, and apparently they have to get together, and
they have to mate in order to.
Because when you started saying that, I'm like, wait a minute, what is he saying? I'm like, oh, he's talking about the thing. I thought you were going to go like that.
Once they get together,
like, wow,
then they
like that.
once they get together, then they can open the gates for
and
Gozer.
I'll be honest with you, the mother actress, I don't really recall her in anything. Like, I don't ever remember.
I think she's been in stuff, TV and film. Just now off the top of my head, I can't think of it.
She's one of the people in the movie that never saw before, and you would almost expect that like I could see where like there might have been kids in the movie that you never seen before, because that happens all the time. But like almost like the adult characters, you kind of expect to see. And she was the one I was like, I have no idea who that is. But I'm sure this is not her first movie. She's probably been in like smaller bit parts.
But and then after that, the kids start to devise a plan as to how they're gonna get them back, and they go to the mine, and they actually trap the mother's spirit that's possessing her.
Yeah, well, this is an interesting segue to something we didn't talk about. So when they approach Gozer for the first time, it's McKenna Grace.
Oh,
yes. And she's telling jokes.
Yes.
And this is something that happens throughout the movie.
Yes.
That she's
bad at like meeting or becoming friends with people.
Like she's a little bit, I don't. She's not
quirky.
antisocial. She's just quirky. She's a little nerdy. She has trouble making friends. So she tries to tell jokes, but a lot of her jokes are like, nerdy jokes. Yeah. They're science jokes. I almost want to say they're Big Bang Theory jokes. And some of her jokes are actually pretty good.
They were, yeah.
I think the only problem I had is there was at least one, if not two, where you couldn't make out what she was saying.
I think a combination of that was the crowd, and a combination was just.
I was almost like, wait, what was the joke? What did she say? What was the punchline? And you don't want, like any of those on-screen jokes, you want to be able to hear clearly and get them, because you don't want to have to think about, wait a minute, did I hear it right? Because if you heard it wrong, then maybe it's not funny, or you're not hearing that it should be funny. And there was at least one joke in there. I'm like, all right, when I see this movie again, because I knew we were seeing it a couple of days later, I said, I really got to pay attention to that line.
Exactly.
Because I want to hear the joke for what it is.
I want to get
because
it.
I'm a science guy too. Like I want to get the joke.
I want to get the joke.
And I found that at least one joke, if not maybe even two, were hard to follow, to understand what she was actually saying, which was a little annoying. Because you want to get the joke.
And now Gozer, interestingly enough, is played by Olivia Wilde in this movie. She's got like a really, and it's so cool because you see Gozer come out, and she looked so familiar as I'm staring at her face. And I knew it wasn't the original actress from '84, but I'm like looking at her, and I'm like, why does she look so familiar?
And who is Olivia Wilde?
It's Olivia Wilde. Olivia Wilde has been in a bunch of shows, films. She had a run on House for a while towards the end of the series.
Oh, okay.
She was in that.
Interesting.
She's directed a number of things which have been very well reviewed. So it was pretty cool that she ended. I don't know how it became that she was chosen for the role, but I thought it was cool that she was in it.
Mm-hmm.
But the one. So eventually they make their way back to the farm, and they think that they figured out a way to trap Gozer, and that this was Egon's
plan. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know that Egon's plan of what he actually put in place was that like easily figured out. Like they were just.
I think McKenna did.
You know what I mean? It was,
but I think she figured out it was
confusing.
based on the miniature that he had in his work in his his little workshop. Because you see that there, you see the farmhouse, you see the property in what he had laid out, and then that giant capacitor that's there.
And then he had all the traps in the dirt.
Right. So essentially, you figure out now.
So she was able to figure it out based on what she saw outside and what she saw on the...
Right, because you could figure out why the capacitor was there and why that would have charged something for a short period of time, power something large for a short period of time. And essentially, Egon makes his whole front yard one giant ghost trap.
Yeah.
But in the beginning of the film, he wasn't able to make it work, which is why he ended up dying.
Yeah. Now, I remember you mentioned this. There was one of your letdowns or complaints about the film is when all the ghosts got loose.
Oh yeah.
It almost was like this was like, because a lot of the movie was to me the movie actually was a little slow. There was a decent amount of dead space in the film. And it should have built up to that point.
Yeah.
Where, like when all of a sudden all the ghosts got loose in the town.
Yep.
Which is very reminiscent of what happened in the first Ghostbusters.
Absolutely. In New York City. But in New York City, when that happened, like, they spent at least a solid minute or so on the city.
On all the things going on.
And everything that was going on, and the ghosts terrorizing the city.
And
you see like one or two ghosts. I think it was like maybe two ghosts.
They had an opportunity there to show...
To really like show how like the ghosts were going to like terrorize the town.
Whatever. And I think... if somebody in this had said, well, we don't want to duplicate what we did in Ghostbusters, I think that was a mistake. Because
this was an opportunity wasted. Like, they could have definitely showcased these ghosts. And it could have been something completely different. And the ghosts, like, they were. Like, there was one ghost who had, like, all these, like, crazy eyes and everything. And then that was different. I just wanted to see more of that.
And they could have gotten away with it. Because one of the things me and Chris always talked about in this movie is that... a key element to the success of this film was the fact that it did not take place in a big city. Because then too much of what we would have seemed like...
Too familiar.
Yeah. Setting it in the countryside, or whether it's the Midwest or upstate, whatever, farmland, small town, mountains and around, it's a completely different setting, and it's a fresh outlook, and it really worked.
I did.
And that was a really smart decision. So you could have still had all these ghosts, going into farmhouses and
there
little small shops and stuff. And I think it would have been.
You had
different.
seen enough of the town in certain parts from people visiting, whether it was the hardware store or the rollerblade eatery, the school, like all of those places. You could have gone back to and revisited and showed how the ghosts were now terrorizing those places.
Yeah, and you could have done it pretty quick too. Like you could have done it in a minute,
30 seconds, 45 seconds,
minute or two tops.
And just
showcase
that a little bit.
It would have added a lot more. So yeah, that to me was definitely a missed opportunity.
And then also too, like just showing the urgency of stopping Gozer. Also, like, because if you don't stop Gozer, it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
So I think that was a little bit of a missed opportunity, and then.
Yeah, I agree.
And finally, they lure, obviously, because now that they have they have the gatekeeper or the keymaster. I can't remember which one that they have.
Yeah.
But the one that they have in the trap, Gozer needs that, because without them, I think she's not as powerful.
It's the catalyst, like
right.
Both of those.
She needs to have both.
Yeah.
So McKenna Grace, they trap the one. They get into Ecto 1 and they hightail it back to the farmhouse. And once they get there, there's a big standoff with Gozer, right? Mm-hmm. And they can't... things at first look like they might have the upper hand, and then Gozer turns the tables on them, and it looks like Gozer's about to kill off, right? McKenna Grace. Bless you.
Ooh, excuse me.
And all of a sudden we hear a familiar voice.
Yeah.
And it's Bill Murray. And so we turn and the camera pans around, and it's the three guys. It's Winston, Dan Aykroyd, and
Bill Murray.
Bill Murray, right? So or Ernie Hudson, I should say, is real
Ernie
name.
Hudson, right.
And we see these guys, and it's like they got their proton packs on and everything. You're like, oh, here we go. Like this is great. And it was such like a nice moment that these guys come in. They weren't in the whole film. It was just a perfect amount of a cameo.
Yeah, and we did see Annie Potts earlier.
And Annie Potts is there early in the film.
So she
makes a
reprised
quick,
her role.
Yep, she makes a quick little scene.
Which was nice.
And we'll talk about the other ones that show up too. But we get to this point now that these guys start to fight Gozer again, and it's all like, you know, that reminisce about how oh, she does remember us.
Yeah,
you
a
know?
little bit of hammy tongue-in-cheek dialogue, especially from Bill Murray.
And it looks like that these guys are going to take her out quick, and of course they go right to crossing the streams, as if that's how they beat her the last time. But this time around, she turns a table on them and she uncrosses the streams, which was really interesting. Not sure how you do that, but they did it. And
maybe Gozer learned from the last time.
Maybe, you know, and then you know, Gozer remembers, and basically she uncrossed the streams and basically threw it back at them, and of course it sends them flying because these guys are now older now. They really probably can't hold their own like they used to. And then it's McKenna Grace who gets a proton pack on, and then she starts to fight Gozer by herself.
Yeah,
and she looks like she's losing, and then all of a sudden she can't hold on to
the hand.
She can't hold on to the stream, the neutron.
It's hard, yeah.
The neutrino, whatever that is. And all of a sudden you see the ghost hand come around, and it's Egon, and he's in a ghost corporal form. Looks older than he did from the original film, but it's a CG'd version of his face. And helping her, and then all of a sudden, the other guys get up. They start throwing their streams, and then at one point they're like looking over at him, and it's almost like they can't believe that like they're seeing him as a ghost.
Yeah,
and then they figure out what to do, and they ended up charging the capacitor, which is what needed to be done in the first place. And it charged up all the traps, and they were able to capture her finally and to hold on to her. And of course, then it also pulls in, the traps were, I guess, so powerful that it ended up pulling in everything that was released out of the mine shaft.
Right.
And it was just such an interesting... It was such an emotional moment, I think, in the film, and it was almost unexpected because there was no type of an emotional feeling like this in the first film. You had the love story with Peter and Dana.
I mean, it was really, I want to say like comedy.
It was like an action comedy, right? Yeah,
action comedy.
Like this wasn't like this. Definitely had a piece of drama to it, and it was very emotional at the end.
Yeah,
where the connection between the daughter
because
saying goodbye to her father, because now she gets to see him too, and now they all realize why he left and why he did what he did.
Because it was the connection between the granddaughter and Egon and the mother
that pulls the mother in, the
reconciliation.
Yeah. And you get to see that, and you get to see them reconcile, and even the guys, even like the Ghostbusters, have like a moment with him, which was really nice. And as much as like
there was a reconciliation with them as well,
right? Yeah. And it's like they're not, and in the film, obviously they're not talking to anybody, but probably for the three of them doing that scene, saying something to Harold as if he was alive, probably had to be emotional. You know, in the scene, Dan Aykroyd's actually crying, and I'm wondering if he was when they filmed that scene. Yeah. Because I feel like I could see those guys like getting emotional about that. Because of how long their friendship was, and even Bill Murray, like he had a rocky relationship with Harold Ramis for a number of years where they didn't speak
in real life. And I think at the end, before he died, they were able to reconcile, and I'm wondering how Bill felt about that when they were filming that scene. So I think on that emotional aspect was
unexpected, but I thought it landed really well.
Yeah, I do too.
I really, really enjoyed that. And then it seems that Egon kind of just disappears into the ether after. It's almost like his job was done. Mm-hmm. Like he stuck around to complete this.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I'm good.
Yep.
I can go now. And then he's gone. So I thought that was, and there was a nice little cool throwback to the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man where he explodes and everyone's covered in marshmallow.
Well, so podcast is definitely covered in marshmallow.
Podcast is in Ecto 1, and some shenanigans happen during the final fight, and it turns out that it's the little Stay Puft Marshmallows, and they're like gremlins, like getting into all the electronics, screwing everything up. Mm-hmm. And then he starts to zap them, and they're exploding marshmallows everywhere. And then he comes out of Ecto 1, and he's just covered in marshmallow. Yeah. So it was a nice little throwback, and obviously it was a nod to the end of the first fight in '84. And then we see Ernie Hudson kind of looking over Ecto 1, and he's like, "What did they do to you? Like we're gonna get you fixed up, right?" So the end scene is you start hearing the Ghostbusters theme music, and Ecto 1's traveling over the bridge into New York
City.
And it seems like it's traveling with a police escort.
Oh, that I wasn't sure. Maybe
there was definitely cops around.
You don't think that was the lights of the ambulance?
There was that, but I have to go back and I could have sworn I remember it with a police escort, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just them. Maybe it was just the Ecto 1.
And then we get into the end credits.
And then we get to the end credits.
And is there more than one Easter egg?
There's two. So the first one is
the first Easter egg. Okay, yeah.
So the first one's with Bill Murray and Dana.
Right. So before you get to the first Easter egg, reading the credits, and it's telling the cast.
Oh yes.
And reading the cast, and it goes, and it says, Dana, whoever, Sigourney Weaver, and I'm like, wait a second. I go, Sigourney Weaver was not in this movie. Yep. I'm sitting going did I miss it? Did I miss the cameo? And then within seconds, it cuts to an Easter egg scene with Bill Murray and Sigourney Weaver. And I'm like, okay, now it makes sense. Perfect.
Yeah, no, and I think that was a great little cameo. It's a great throwback to the start of the film in '84 where he's doing the cards. As a science experiment with two subjects.
Yeah, and I'm glad they brought Sigourney Weaver into the film.
Yeah, me too. Gives it needed to. The only person that was truly missing from this was
Rick Moranis. Right. Who's a goofball.
Who just, he really just hasn't done much acting at all. I mean, he really stopped after his wife passed away. He took care of his kids. But now his kids are grown up. Yeah, I think either in or out of college at this point.
I could see the producers approaching him and saying, yeah, no, I'm not interested. I'm not into that. It's just all right, whatever.
My hope is that if they end up doing a sequel, and it looks like they're going to try to, that he at least gets a cameo in that next one, because I'd love to see him again as Louis Tully, and see what would happen, But so we see in the final credit scene, we see that Ernie Hudson's character is.
Oh wait, yeah. So then that scene ends.
That scene ends.
And they do more credits, and I think they literally get to the end of the movie.
This is the end credit scene,
and then we get to the final Easter egg, which, in my opinion, might be the longest Easter egg.
It was long, yeah, because it's
any movie.
It's a conversation between.
It's really long
between Ernie Hudson's Winston and Annie Potts's Janine.
Now that being said, the Easter egg for Spider-Man: No Way Home was pretty long too. Mm-hmm. But it was this Easter egg was really
it was
really long,
and we just basically start to get a little idea of what was going on with Winston this whole time and how he's actually become a successful businessman. It seems a very successful businessman to the point where now he can actually go and he has purchased the firehouse, which seems to be in shambles since
they make it sound like that the firehouse was turned into a Starbucks.
Ray says that in the conversation, but I think that was more of a joke.
Okay, because I remember thinking, wait a second,
it's not turned into a Starbucks because you could tell it's decrepit and broken down.
Yeah. So
I think that was probably more of a joke. Okay. So I mean, but it seems that Ernie Hudson Winston buys the firehouse and brings Ecto 1 in, and the last thing you really see is him tapping on the car and being like, all right, we're going to fix this up.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I think, they're knocking on the door of a sequel, for sure.
As well, and they should. The only thing I just don't understand is how they're going to do the sequel. These kids are in high school. Like these kids aren't going to stop their life and become Ghostbusters. They still have to finish school. So I don't know. Like Paul Rudd, I can see Paul Rudd being a Ghostbuster.
I guess it depends upon how, did they plan on doing a sequel in the next year or two, or waiting a couple of years? I don't know.
I would think they would want to do it. You got to do it while the iron's hot. I think you would have to do it within like the next couple of years.
Because at the end of the day,
you could time jump. I
think this movie made enough money.
Oh yeah.
To green light a sequel, because we all know that there are a lot of movies that end with a setup for a sequel, and the movie does so bad it doesn't happen. Get one. Yep. It happened with the original Lord of the Rings animated film.
The animated film.
It happened with the Godzilla. Mm-hmm. It happened with Spider-Man 2 with Andrew Garfield.
Yes.
These are
teasing the Sinister Six.
These are all these. There are movies that they sit there and say their expectation is to do another movie,
and they don't,
and it doesn't happen.
The 2016 Ghostbusters film, they start talking about Gozer.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that's the post-credit scene. Is they're all like together, and they all start talking. There's a conversation about Gozer that happens, and you're like, oh, okay, so they're going to go there for the second film. Yeah, and that never happened.
And that never happened. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think it ever will.
No,
they'd be crazy.
I really like this film. I thought it did a good job of bringing the fan base back and wanting to see something further happen after this.
Yeah, and it's and it was only a few years after the failed reboot. So people on the board, you could say look, the reboot failed miserably. Do we even bother with another sequel in continuity? And the money people could sit there and say, well, they just look and say, well, the failed reboot wasn't, the Ghostbusters name was not enough to make the reboot a success.
Yeah.
But
I think this one
movie was.
Yeah, I think this was. I think this, and even in the next film, I would think if they can get the original guys to again come back for like a small cameo, again, I think that would be a good thing. Just to maybe show them in the firehouse or something like that.
Because I don't know that it would be a success if the main characters of the sequel were the original cast.
No, I wouldn't want to see that. And I think most people at this point understand that it's not going to be that.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be that.
No. I think how they did it was introducing this next generation.
Yeah.
I'll bet younger, but this next generation of people that are going to come in.
Yeah, and that's what it should. That's what it should be.
But I'm interested in seeing that. I want to see where it goes, and hopefully they can make it within the next couple of years. But I'm excited. I really enjoyed this film. I thought it was great. If you haven't seen it yet, I believe it's coming out on Blu-ray end of January, beginning of February. It'll probably be on digital even before that. But
I would say
I'm very excited to see where this goes.
I would say I definitely enjoyed it. But based on the preview, I think I did expect it to be a little bit better than it was. Because I thought the preview was really, really good. And the movie was just good. So, minor... minor criticism, but okay. I think I walked out of there and I think I gave the movie 3 stars, and I was expecting 3.5. With that preview, I was expecting 3.5.
I think 3 from you is still pretty decent.
Yeah,
that's still
a
pretty
good grade. I walked out of there with 3. So I definitely enjoyed it, and I had no problem seeing it twice.
Yep.
And I think I have no problem seeing it again, on TV.
And I think when I saw it the second time, I think I even appreciated it even a little bit more.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. So
but I was just but I'm looking forward to another film for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Me too. So I think it's going to wrap up episode 50.
Yes.
So guys, we made it through to the end. Thank you very much for sticking with us.
We have no idea what episode 51 is going to be because we have at least 3 movies that we've seen that we haven't reviewed, and then all of a sudden, Matrix.
Yeah, Matrix Resurrection.
Resurrection is here and about, and we want to see that. And
we got more coming.
We got more coming.
So I hope you guys join us thank you guys so much for sticking around for this long and in-depth review as we always do.
Yep.
We hope you enjoy
we
it.
wanted to do something good for the 50th,
We did.
50th episode.
We did, and that's why we chose this film.
Yeah.
So guys, stay safe out there. Thank you for watching and listening. We'll talk to you guys soon.
See you next time at Goody and Johnny Mo at the movies.
Take care.